Been a fairly comfortable start for Arne Slot at Liverpool. 2 wins out of two, beating Ipswich and Brentford 2-0, one away, one at home, and it's job done. They've looked decent doing so, not amazing, but they're getting the jobs done and they're showing signs of real quality while doing it. Could there have been a harder 2 games to judge them on? Yes, they've been very fortunate with those opening 2 games. And this Sunday's game against Manchester United will be the real show of where this Liverpool team is under Arne Slot in terms of where they're going to be competing in the league and where their standards are set going forward, because there naturally is going to be a bit of a drop off from Jurgen Klopp, because if we regard him as one of the best managers in the Premier League era, then you're not going to find someone that's on his level. Surely that there has to be some loss in that regard with him not being at the club anymore. But if they can battle for top four, get a comfortable finish in there, third, even push second and first, although I don't think they will, then I'd consider that par. I'd consider that a good season, a couple of good cup runs, and it gives Arne Slot something to build on. But tactically, how did they look? We'll go over it now. There's some things I like and don't like. On the ball first. So when Liverpool would build up, they build up in a very narrow sort of 3-3-4, 3-3-1-3 shape. And that would be with Robertson inverting from left back to become a left centre back, Van Dijk in the middle, and Konate right centre back, Gravenberch as the six, with McAllister and Trent Alexander-Arnold in line with the midfielders, but in a more orthodox right back position, with Szoboszlai operating in between the lines, offering short, turning it into a bit of a diamond midfield. And because of the narrow shape and because of the fact that especially Brentford at the weekend man marked him and put and pressed him high, it was very hard to build up with the slow passing through the midfield, because with that lack of width being created, they're not doing the best to create a lot of angles. And although they dropped the midfield into a bit of a V shape because of the diamond, which should open up passing lanes to play through, the narrowness and the press made it hard for them to really unlock those angles to play the ball too. It resulted in them going long a lot, which is not a bad thing at all. Usually they go long to Salah from either Alisson or Van Dijk. It can go to Diaz, but Diaz is usually the pass after. It's Salah to Diaz usually. And the reason you go Salah first is because Salah receiving it in these areas close to the touchline with the fullback closing in on him is maybe the best in the world at bringing the ball under control in difficult situations in these positions. His first touch is immaculate, and he can get on the ball here, look to progress to the vertical movements of the players behind him, the likes of Szoboszlai, the likes of Jota, the likes of McAllister on the far side and Diaz, which can then create angles for him to play through and horizontally or even run through with the ball at his feet to create opportunities that way, to get Liverpool up the pitch quicker. But if that doesn't work and they are getting a bit overly pressed, then they can change their build-up pattern. And the way they do that is by splitting the defence to make it a lot more wider, would give the invitation for Alisson to move up and play that extra man. The Brentford wouldn't shadow a marker to go and press. He would be allowed to get on the ball, allowed to pick his passes, look for a player that would make a subtle little movement into space to receive it and then play forward, or get that better, more accurate, longer ball to Salah or Diaz. But what would it look like when they force Brentford back? Now, it would be in a three diamond 4-2 +1 for something I'll go over in a minute. And that would be Van Dijk in the middle of Robertson and Konate, who would move a bit further up to have Gravenberch in between them in the sole six. And McAllister and Szoboszlai would push up in the half spaces, with Jota dropping a little bit deeper and Salah and Diaz wide and holding the width. And so it would create a bit of a diamond midfield with these guys to sort of try and play around an opponent's shape into central areas where they could create from here, or to drag an opponent's shape in more narrow so they could go more direct to Salah or Diaz from Van Dijk in these situations. We know how accurate his long range passing is. Where this tactic really serves to benefit someone, and that +1 I was on about earlier, is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, he has been unleashed through this tactic and through Arne Slot, because he doesn't fit into a position in this formation. He has been given the freest of free roles, and you don't really see that in top level football anymore. He is not stuck to a position at all. People are saying it's good to see him back as a normal right back. He's not inverting anymore, but he is kind of inverting. He's doing everything, really. He's not staying in the defensive line to dictate play from deep and hit long range passing. He's also not getting to the byline to whip crosses in. He's just occupying spaces that best serve him and the team adapts around it. Now, you see him in positions like this where he is a regular right back, taking the ball in these sort of right, deeper half spaces, and the diamond of the box still remains. You can even see him a bit further up between the lines to outnumber the opposition's team and turn it into a bit of a 3-1-6 with Szoboszlai, Jota, McAllister in the middle with Diaz and Salah holding width. Him and Salah can also interchange positions with Alexander-Arnold going out right, Salah moving inside, and Konate and Robertson taking the ball in these situations more. Or you can even see him invert alongside Gravenberg, turn it into a more of a sort of 3-2, which would then create a box midfield with McAllister and Szoboszlai as they would operate in these positions higher up, with Jota still dropping deep. And so it still retains that sort of Jurgen Klopp style of overloading the central areas and getting the ball in there and using their quick one-touch passing to create chances, which they did time and time again, with the use of vertical passes and third-man runs. So let's just say Van Dijk passing the ball to Salah here, you'd already get Szoboszlai making this run, which Salah could play him into on the byline. And by the time that Salah's played that ball to Szoboszlai, you maybe get Trent Alexander-Arnold showing for it here, who could then receive the pull back and get the shot away or whatever. So it's a lot of vertical passes and movements reacting into space to try and exploit it. But a lot of that comes from where Trent decides to position himself. The team's shape adapts around him to create the best situations within that moment. And as I say, his range of passing is fantastic. The short, mid, and long range passing will always be a threat to teams. And because of the fluid positioning, you almost can't set up to deal with him because if a player's got a certain job to go and press him, even if it's a pure zone, then he's not going to be there next time. So how do you know when your trigger is to go press him? And generally, he's moving into a position where there's going to be an overload. So you press him, and then you risk leaving Szoboszlai or Gravenberg free in this position where he could play it to either of the two. Maybe Konate's making the run outside of him. So as much as it's maybe not as intense as it was under Jurgen Klopp, and it doesn't feel like it's going from back to front as quickly, it's still overloading and it's still high pressure and high intensity with the passing and the numbers in this area. You'd sometimes get the overlapping run of Robertson on this side to contribute in numbers in this area and give Diaz a bit of support. But that's getting a lot rarer, though, and I feel like that left centre back position is something Liverpool haven't addressed, which they need to, and it doesn't look like they will do for the rest of the window. But a lot to enjoy, a lot of technical quality to hold on to possession in these forward areas, and one touch pass and play with quick movement to create chances is a testament to how well this team has been built. But what's the changes off the ball? Now, Liverpool's defensive shape is in a more 4-2-4, 4-2-3-1, and they're nowhere near as high press as they were under Jurgen Klopp, which is obviously the style he was renowned for. And they will only occasionally press the player on the ball, and it'll be generally Mo Salah. If the ball comes in here, he'll look to curve his run from Aya over to Pinnock. You'd get one of the players dropping in on Norgard to make sure the easy pass doesn't go in, with maybe Szoboszlai pressing the centre back on the ball. The problem is it was a few times where Brentford turned it into a 2-4 build-up, and as a result, with the narrow shape of that front four, there was easy passes onto the fullbacks, and this is where you can really exploit this Liverpool team. Is the gap vertically between the fullbacks and the wide players is pretty big. On the left side, they had Asia, who's not an athletic left back that's capable of bursting away. He's a centre back by trade. Ruslov as well isn't amazingly quick, so they weren't able to make the most of these spaces well enough. McAllister and Gravenberg do lack a bit of mobility, so they could get pulled out of position. They will look to generally man mark the players on the ball in these deeper areas, and if Liverpool do get pulled into a press, then either Gravenberg or McAllister can follow suit if a player drops deep to get on the ball. So let's just say Szoboszlai goes to press here, Janelt drops in. You can see Gravenberg follow suit to try and prevent him from getting on the ball, but he will quickly look to drop back into place. And when that original shape is beaten, they will look to drop back. And when they do, the space gets closed off quick. They don't want to leave that space in behind. And as a result, you'll see the back six essentially drop off quick. And it does leave a bit of separation between that back six and the front four that can sort of catch them in a bit of a transitional sense. And if you get teams, which they haven't really faced yet, that look to maintain possession in the middle of the pitch, that could be something that catches them out. And if the ball goes wide, Liverpool could be caught in those areas. So let's just say if it goes over to the right hand side where Mbeumo went to, you get Luis Diaz quickly racing back to try and double up in with Robertson because of Liverpool's narrow shape and the fact that their fullbacks aren't defensively the best you can get at them. So Diaz will come and cover. But if the ball goes over to the right or the left hand side for the opposition, the right hand side for Liverpool, which it did a few times, and you get one on one with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who, as much as he had a great game on the ball, did struggle a bit defensively. You wouldn't see Salah racing back to get in position as much because he would be left upfield intentionally as a more transitional threat. You'd want him on the counter attack for when Liverpool did win the ball back and they could get up the field quicker, as we saw for the first goal. So Gravenberch would come along and try and cover that space. But the issue is with that is it would leave a little bit more space in the middle of the park. If they could beat that side and beat the players converging on them over onto this width, then there would be space in the middle for players to get on the ball and play. again, weren't exploited as much against Brentford because Brentford don't commit many men forward to the attack at all. And Ipswich's build up and attack was very fast paced, so they weren't looking to sort of take the sideways option at points. But that space does get opened up, and it is a big difference for how it was played under Jurgen Klopp. They do quickly drop into shape with that back six and trying to get the width covered as quickly as possible to make sure that they don't get overloaded in these areas. Maybe at the sacrifice of somewhere else, though. And it'll be interesting to see how that style compares against United, who we know do like to overload the forward areas with the 3-1-6 shape that we've seen a lot more of this season, and the numbers that can create, and how hard it could be for that back six to deal with. So Sunday is going to be an interesting game. It'll really teach us about where Liverpool and Manchester United are, to be honest with you. And that's a game I'll definitely be doing an analysis of next week. But for now, look, you've got to give Arne Slot credit with what he's doing. He is trying to change Liverpool into more his own image. And I will say the freedom he's given Trent Alexander-Arnold is commendable. And with performances like he produced on Sunday, then you have to say it's going to be hard for any team to have to deal with that throughout the season. The only thing I would worry about is the attitude that Trent showed at the end of the game. I'm not talking about moaning about being subbed, because that happens all the time. Players don't like being subbed. That's a tale as old as time. But it was the reaction when Arne Slot went to speak to him and his reaction after the game that I would find a little bit concerning if I was a Liverpool fan. Because, all right, you have your moment, you sulk, you get over it. It was the way it was sustained, which tells me there's a lack of something between maybe him and the manager. I may be reading too much into it, but when you hear the rumours about him potentially leaving at the end of his contract, it didn't look great. And I just think it's a little bit that Liverpool didn't need going into such a big game. But who knows? I guess we'll see how that develops. But yeah, I'd love to know what you guys thought. Cheers for watching. In a bit.